That person is definitely good for nothing. They're the worst. I knew it. I warned you. What would happen if God spoke about you with the same harshness you use for others? Absolutely no one is more like Jesus by being the most efficient at the act of destroying the fallen. Who do I look more like right now? The restorer of lives or the accuser of our brothers?
Let he who is without sin cast.
Neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more. Before opening our mouths to comment on someone's fall, we should always first ask ourselves 4 essential questions. The very next time you see someone struggling on the ground, please take a moment to remember exactly where you yourself were once lifted from. It is essential to ensure that your hands are completely clear of any stones so they are entirely ready and available to offer restoration to others.
I never thought I would find mercy.
That person is definitely good for nothing. They're the absolute worst. I knew it. I warned you all. How quickly those phrases come to us when someone falls. How easy it is to pass judgment when someone else makes a mistake, messes up, or is exposed for everyone to see. But let's be honest, those are never the words we choose when we're the ones who stumble. When I'm the one who fails, I don't say I'm good for nothing. I say I'm going through a difficult season. When someone else falls, we assume the mask has finally come off. But when we fall, we argue that the mistake doesn't represent our true essence. For others, we demand immediate consequences. For ourselves, we plead for mercy. And that's where we run into life's most uncomfortable mirror. What would happen if God spoke about you with the same harshness you use for others? What would happen if heaven summarized your entire existence by your worst day? Or even worse, if it exposed your most private thoughts on social media? Maybe the real problem when someone falls isn't just their mistake. Maybe the true tragedy is that their fall reveals how relentless and unmerciful we become towards sin that isn't our own. Someone else's fault never leaves us feeling neutral. When someone makes a serious mistake, something becomes destabilized in our environment. Sometimes we experience sadness, disappointment, or genuine anger. But if we look deep into our minds, sometimes a much darker and quieter feeling appears, a kind of satisfaction that we suppress. In the field of human behavior, there is a term of German origin for this, Schadenfreude, which describes that secret relief or pleasure we experience at the misfortune of others. We don't say it out loud because it's socially unacceptable, but inside, the ego whispers, I was right. They finally realized who they were. Why do we fall into this dynamic? Because the human mind often uses the failure of others as a dysfunctional shortcut to evaluate its own worth. When we see someone exposed, we automatically feel a little cleaner, more stable, and morally superior. We frequently transform the pain of others into a protective psychological buffer for our own deep-seated insecurities. However, there is an absolutely inescapable and profound truth in the design of our relationships. Absolutely no one ever becomes more like Jesus by being the most efficient at destroying those who have fallen. On the contrary, the inability to look at those who make mistakes with compassion reveals that we have forgotten our own fragility. Now then, Jesus never treated sin as something insignificant, but he didn't treat the sinner as waste material either. And this is where we must learn to discern, as professionals and as people of faith. Not all errors are managed in the same way, because not all falls have the same origin or the same impact. The wisdom we find in the scriptures shows us that there are different protocols for different realities, and we can group them into 3 very clear scenarios. First, we have the falls that require restoration. That there are stumbles that are born from weakness, from exhaustion, or from emotional immaturity. An example of this is Peter, who, in a moment of panic, denied knowing his master 3 times, or the prodigal son, who dismantled his inheritance in a life without direction. Faced with these falls, the approach the Bible teaches us is not public stoning. In Galatians 6:1, we are given a very precise instruction. Restore him in a spirit of gentleness, considering yourself, lest you also be tempted. To restore means to return utility to something that was broken, not to discard it. When Jesus encounters Peter after the resurrection, he doesn't convene a formal gathering to humiliate him or bring up the memory of his cowardice. Instead, he gently leads him back to love and fully reinstates his divine purpose. Secondly, we have the falls that require confrontation and boundaries. Let me explain. There are other scenarios where the error is deep, conscious, and harms third parties. An emblematic case is that of King David with Bathsheba, a dynamic of abusive power, deception, and conspiracy to commit murder. God did not sugarcoat David's reality. He sent the prophet Nathan, to confront him in a direct and firm way. But note the method. Nathan did not go to spread the sin through the palace corridors to feed the court's morbid curiosity. He went directly to the person responsible to awaken his conscience and stop the damage. In counseling and in life, we learn that confronting firmly and establishing clear consequences is not the opposite of love. In fact, sometimes it is the highest form of mercy to prevent a person from completely destroying themselves. And thirdly, there are situations that demand justice and protection. And with this, we must be extremely categorical. Mercy must never be used as a disguise for complicity. When we face physical abuse, violence, exploitation, or actual crimes, silence is not a spiritual option. It is negligence. Stories like those of Ananias and Sapphira in the New Testament show us that premeditated deceit, manipulation, and systematic hypocrisy meet a boundary of immediate judgment. Protecting the vulnerable and denouncing evil is a fundamental part of God's character. Forgiving someone's soul does not mean exempting them from being held accountable before human laws. One of the most revealing accounts of human cruelty is found in John chapter 8, with the well-known story of the woman who was caught in the very act of adultery. A group of religious leaders drags her and places her in the center of the public square. If we analyze the social dynamics of that moment, it's clear that those men weren't interested in justice or the holiness of the people, let alone the restoration of that woman. She was simply an instrument, a moral corpse they intended to use as a trap to corner Jesus. They wanted a spectacle that would confirm their own rigidity. Today, we continue to see the same staging. There are people who dedicate themselves to collecting the mistakes of others, to stand on them and look taller. They build narratives, exaggerate details, and expose the intimacy of the fallen to validate their own agenda. But Jesus' response disarmed the court. Let him who is without sin among you be the first to throw a stone at her. Jesus didn't validate the woman's conduct, but he dismantled the hypocrisy of her harass accusers. By saying, "Neither do I condemn you, go and sin no more," he set the perfect standard, a grace that embraces the person's identity, combined with a truth that doesn't negotiate what is wrong. In the story of the flood, there's a passage that reminds us how fragile we are. Noah, after having overcome the greatest crisis of his life, gets drunk and is left exposed and naked in his tent. His son Ham enters, sees his father's vulnerability, and runs out to spread it, turning weakness into family gossip. However, his other two sons, Shem and Japheth, take a cloak, walk backward to avoid seeing their father's nakedness, and cover him with respect. They didn't justify Noah's drunkenness, but they chose to protect his dignity while he recovered. Before opening our mouths to comment on someone's fall, we should ask ourselves 4 essential questions. Am I speaking to help heal or just to feed the surrounding morbid curiosity? Am I seeking the whole truth or do I just want to be right? Does what I'm about to say build a bridge of restoration or throw a stone of condemnation? Who do I resemble more right now? The restorer of lives or the accuser of our brothers? Often, the original harm didn't start with us, but it expands and multiplies through our words. If God had evaluated you solely by your worst decision, by that moment you're ashamed of and that no one else knows, you wouldn't be here today. God didn't cast you aside. He sought you in your darkness, confronted you with love, held you while you trembled, and covered you when you were exposed. The very next time that you see someone struggling on the ground, take a moment to remember exactly where you were lifted from. Always ensure that your hands are completely free of judgmental stones so they are fully available to offer restoration to others.